Hey guys, it's Jim from Import Image Racing, and on this week's Product Peek, we're going to show you how to set the preload on your new or used Subaru Coilover suspension. So let's spring into it, eh? We can start by answering the question, what is preload? Spring preload is the amount of compression the coil spring is under when the suspension has no additional forces applied, such as road force or the weight of the vehicle. Incorrect preload is the #1 cause of suspension noise or spring binding, especially when the coilovers are brand new. Most suspension manufacturers recommend between 3 or 5 millimeters of preload, but always read your spec sheet to make sure you're not over or under compressing your spring. Now there are some pretty sophisticated ways out there to measure and set your spring height, but I'm going to guess you don't have a bunch of expensive tools like dial indicators or a spring press. So let me show you a few tricks on how to set your spring preload with your eyes and your spanner wrench. Now that we're over to the front end of our VB chassis WRX, I'm going to show you that we've already uncorked the spring so that we have 0 preload. And you can tell that by the fact that with no additional weight on top of this car, you can see there's a lot of up and down motion in our coil spring. One of the ways to set your preload is by pushing the spring all the way to the top and then adjusting your coil perch until it just makes contact with the spring. Like so. So there is basically no up and down motion in our coil spring. Next, we're going to move our locking collar up until it just makes contact with our spring perch. With the Sharpie, I'm going to mark the forward-facing portion of our spring collar. I'm pretty familiar with the Silvers brand coilover, so that I can tell you that the thread pitch on this collar is 52 by 2 millimeters. So what that means to me is for every rotation I go up and down on this collar, it's going to raise or lower the spring by 2 millimeters. So we are going to turn our spring perch once and twice. So what that means is we now have 4 millimeters of gap between our spring perch and our locking collar, which means we now have 4 millimeters of preload on our spring. Like I said, I'm pretty familiar with these Silvers brands coilovers, so I know that every rotation is 2 millimeters up or down. But you might not know that with your specific brand of coilover, so I'll show you another trick. If we rotate this another half turn, that means the gap between our perch and our locking collar is going to be 5 millimeters. And you know what else is approximately 5 millimeters? Our spanner wrench. So as you can see, our spanner wrench fits in between the gap. So that means we now have 5 millimeters of preload on our spring. So you can mark that on your spring perch. And since we're trying to set to 4 millimeters, we can remove the spring perch and turn it 180 down, giving us approximately 4 millimeters of preload. Since our preload is set, we're going to lock our collar down. And continue this procedure around all 4 corners of the vehicle. Thanks for watching this week's Product Peek on how to set the preload for your Subaru suspension coilover kit. So if you're looking for a coilover kit or thousands more parts, be sure to hit up importimageracing.com for the best deals on the web and in the world, and we will catch you on the next one.